Okay, so it's always good to have a piece of scrap paper that you can test your colors on, because when I look at my pan here, these colors look much darker than they do on my piece of paper. So it's good to be able to test the colors that you're making before you put it on your final painting. Um, so the process that we're going to be doing today is called tinting. Um, it's a lot like wet into wet, but on a much bigger scale. So you can see I have my colors pretty much made up. I'm going to be doing a jellyfish. So the background is mostly going to be blue. So I made a lot of that color. So what I'm going to do first is I'm going to take some clean water. This isn't super, actually kind of blue. Um, And then I'm going to take a brush that's clean. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to get the whole painting wet, um, except for any areas that you would want to be white. So if you have any areas in your painting that you know are going to stay white, then you want to try to avoid getting that area wet, because then the paint won't want to seep into that area. So the only portion of my painting that I want to kind of stay really, really light is this middle section of my jellyfish. So I'm just going to start by outlining it so I know not to get any paint in that area. And then from there, I'm just going to apply water all over. You want to be able to see like the water so it looks like shiny on your paper, and that's how you know you have enough on there. Having your paper be wet before you start to paint on it is going to help the paint spread. It means you also don't have to make up as much of the paint. If I was just going to be going straight onto this with my paper dry, I would need to be making like a ton more of that color. And the idea of what we're doing today is just to add in the base layer. So this isn't like the final version of the background. It's more just a place that we're going to be starting off from. So if my background's going to be primarily blue, I'm just going to be adding in a very light blue. So that way, then I can go back later and add in any more details or add in more color to make it darker. So you can kind of see. So there's my color. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start going in with this color I made up and start to apply it. So you can see it automatically starts to like bleed out, which makes it much easier to start to fill in this background. And so I'm going back, I have my painting up on my laptop. So I'm looking at my painting, kind of seeing where the colors are. I'm not just putting this blue everywhere. I'm going to be putting different colors where my jellyfish is. But this is going to make your life so much easier when you then go in and start painting everything else, because you don't have to worry about trying to, work around your object. You already have some color laid down, and then you can go back in and add more details after. And I'm working kind of quickly so that way all that water I put down doesn't just dry up. I have some areas in my background that are actually a little bit darker. So now that I've had my light color on, I'm going to go in and start to add in some of those darker areas. Does anyone have any questions so far about maybe starting their watercolor or anything about this process? So if you get an area that you lay down some paint and so like this area here that's kind of like leaking out of my jellyfish, what you can do is if you wipe your brush off and get it nice and clean and dry, then you can go back in and kind of like erase it off. Or if you get an area that's way too dark, you can do the same thing. So if I wipe my brush off, I can then go in and like kind of seep up some of that extra color. Or if you want to soften an edge, so like this is like really a way more harsh line than I would like. So I'm going to like clean my brush off, and with just a tiny bit of water on my brush, I'm going to kind of like paint over that area so it kind of blends it out. So at this point, I think this is a good base for my painting. And so I'm just going to stop touching it. So I'm going to let it dry. And then once it's dry, I can go back in and start to add in more of the details to make it look more like a jellyfish and not just this very, very watered down painting. So that's how you tint your paper and get it ready for your project.